We've been playing Clair Obscur Expedition 33, and frankly, we're a little obsessed. So we decided that we wanted to jump on here and just talk about it because this game is absolutely unbelievable. But before we get into it, how's it going, Slam?
Hey, it's going great. I, like you, just finished Expedition 33, and it's all I've been playing for the last week. Um, I think it's been a long time since I've put 50 or so hours into
Yeah.
one game in 1 week. I have not been obsessed with a game like I've been obsessed with Expedition 33, and as long as I can remember. I love this game, and yeah,
Yep.
obviously we'll dig more into it, but
Yep.
I'm having like I was just trying to pick up another game, following it to take a step away after finishing the story. I'm obviously going to go back. I think I'm going to try to knock out the platinum in this one, uh, but just kind of step away and play something else. I'm have a hard time digging into anything else. It's
Yep.
really tough to come away from Expedition 33, to be honest, but really enjoyed my time with that one.
Yeah. No, same here. When you play this game, and for anybody watching this, if you are a JRPG fan, you have to play this game. I'll say that number one. Number two, this will be as spoiler free as we can possibly make it. There are going to be potential light spoilers, so just throwing that out there for what it's worth. But this is the same thing for me, man. I beat it. I actually, so funny story. Slam and I were playing. We were talking while we were playing, and I was gonna go do all these extra things before I beat it. And Slam came to me and said, "Brandon, you need to beat this game right now because I need to talk to somebody about this." And so I was like, "All right, Slam, I'm gonna go beat it." And I beat it, and oh my gosh, like we can't talk about any of the stuff at the end because you need to experience this game. But I have not been able to stop thinking about this game. I'm running the soundtrack 24/7. My kids know about the music. They're listening to it all the time. And I couldn't pick something else up. There are plenty of other games that I still need to go back to and finish. There were some games that I was in the middle of when I started Expedition
Same.
33, and I just got so sucked into this. Um, but I just jumped right back in, and now I'm doing all the extra stuff. I beat some insanely hard bosses, which I will not talk about. Um, just today, actually, right before the podcast, and I'm level 90 on my characters
Man.
now. So my PS5 is telling me that I've put over 100 hours into this game. I don't know how that's possible. I don't know where that time went, but I believe it.
I believe it. It's crazy, man. 100 hours in a week. You gotta love it. It is truly a special experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this one we'll just dive right into this one
Yeah.
because it's the only thing that we can even think about these days. This one is there are times in our lives where there are these like genre defining games that come out. Most recently I think about Breath of the Wild when that came out. It
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, we love Zelda, but this is something entirely different. Like this is unbelievable, right?" You've had games in the past like Final Fantasy VII, right, where it's genre defining in the sense that at that time it just made this massive impact on the industry. Still has an impact today. There are plenty of other games like that, and I feel like Clair Obscur is 100% one of those games because they nailed absolutely every element of this game, and I am still just completely mind blown that this team did it with so little resources. It's basically an indie studio. This is their first game, and I actually went on their website. I don't know if this is true, but I think there are literally 33 people
There
on the dev
is,
team,
yeah.
and that is amazing.
I love that.
um, and yeah, they brought in an all-star voice cast. They did motion capture, and then they brought this game out at 49.99. And I'm like, we're in this world now where Nintendo comes out and says, "Hey, Switch 2 is going to be more expensive than you expected, maybe, but the games are going to be variable, and some of them will be $80, like Mario Kart." And then Microsoft just came out recently and raised their prices, which doesn't make any sense at all for a 5-year-old console that not too many people are buying anyway, but I digress.
Yeah, I
And
don't
then
know what they were thinking with that. You get the 2
yeah,
terabyte Xbox Series X is more than the PS5 Pro now.
yeah, I don't yeah, I don't understand. And it's in this context, this historical gaming context we're in, where Expedition 33 comes out and it's 49.99. I mean, you can get like the Lumiere edition, which I did. Actually, it's sitting right back there. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh, I so
But
badly wanted the collector's edition with, like, the music
I
box.
know.
Ah,
Oh, I
god.
know. I know. I was like looking back and I was so I looked at eBay and I saw those prices and I was like, don't do it, Brandon. Don't. I know you want to, but don't do it. Um, but that one was like normal game price, but you can get the game for 49.99 and it's on Game Pass.
Yep.
So if you have an Xbox, hopefully you already have one instead of needing to get one later, so you don't have to pay those prices. You could just play the game.
Yep.
It's mind-boggling, and in my opinion, it's totally just shamed the industry. With all of these conversations about all of these, things that they need to do and the amount of investment, I'm like, I'm sorry, but if you can make a game like Clair Obscur Expedition 33, then AAA games don't need to cost $5 bajillion, and make it so that if it doesn't sell, it's gonna sink an entire group of developers. Like I don't know. It's just I don't know all of the ins and outs of the industry and the costs and things like that. Obviously, I'm not in it, but something can be changed if you have a team that can come out with this game at that price.
Yeah, I
Because
think,
yeah,
part of it too is it's shocking that they were able to do this on a team at 33. I mean, just think, um, Assassin's Creed, for example, Shadows, probably hundreds and if not thousands of people working on that game, across multiple studios. Obviously, that's gonna be more expensive. Um, I think it is something truly special to recognize that they were able to do something this incredible with just 33 people.
yep,
I don't think this is gonna be able to be replicated. Um, I think it's gonna be very difficult to find 33 people to bring together to make something on this level, um, on a
yeah.
different team or somewhere else. I think this is kind of just a special case, something truly unique. I don't. It would be great if you could replicate this and do this with other games and just have a group of amazing, passionate, you know, team members put together something this great. But yeah, I do think Expedition 33 is going to stand out as one of gaming history's greatest achievements.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta call out Sandfall here. So, I'm very excited to see what else they come out with because so they on their website. That's what I've been looking up over here. I promise I'm not ignoring you. Um, they're founded in 2020, and basically their focus is um, making single player experiences, which is a win in my opinion, to deliver incredible stories with intriguing characters and gorgeous fantasy worlds. And they're doing it with small indie teams. So their plan is to keep doing stuff like this, which makes me very excited for what's next. And I could go into every single one of these devs or the people on this team. Like shout outs to the dev team. You guys are incredible for coming out with this game, but I gotta give it to Jennifer. I don't know how to say her name. Jennifer Svedberg Yen. That's my best attempt at it. Who's the lead writer for this? She like I, I haven't seen writing like this in general in 10 years, if not longer. Like movies, games, whatever. She nailed it. She absolutely nailed it. All of the characters, the story itself is just unbelievable. So that's the kind of stuff that I would love to see more from the industry itself. The way they get into the story, the way the story has layers. Every act you go through adds different layer and complexity to the story, that makes it more meaningful. It sort of fills in some of the gaps that you that you might have been wondering about in the previous sections. And the characters are just so good, every single one of them. And she managed to nail these these hard themes, or she and her team, I'm gonna say, right? I'm sure there were others included in this process, but she managed to nail these like very challenging themes, like how do you process through grief and overcoming some of these challenges, and yet still including some of these levity, but there's some of this levity between the characters, and the character interactions are so great. We can get into a little bit more of that stuff later, but what this team came out with is it's just art. It's
Yeah.
just art
I think
at every level.
I think you look at this, and I mean, I compare the story and the world and everything, to the writing you see in books, movies, TV shows, and how things build and the world around it and the characters and how everything in it has meaning. And Expedition 33 really does an amazing job, like you said, of just filling in the holes. There's no filler. There's so much lore and background to read into to every single thing that happens in this game. You have questions constantly. Those questions ultimately get answered in really creative ways, right? And a lot of it, and it, um, like you said, we will get into this a little bit later, but like the way they weave in the gameplay elements and link them to the personalities of the characters is wild to me, right? Um, yeah, it's truly is something special.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and the characters are so good, and there's so much depth to each of them, and in the battle system too. I mean, we could just get into all of this stuff, but
Yeah.
um, before we just keep waxing poetic about this, because we could just that could be the entire episode. I did want to ask, favorite characters.
Oh, you want me to go first?
Yep, I do.
My top one is CL. I am in love with her gameplay style, her personality, her grounded, empathetic approach to everything that happens. Everything is so dire and everything is an emergency. Like everything is so stressful in this game, right? Luna is always freaking out about staying on track. You know what I mean? She's just like so like she doesn't take a second to breathe ever. um my L is constantly surprised at what's happening to her and learning as she goes from the people around her. Verso, he's been around for a minute and he's kind of trying to um yeah, I don't want to say too much, but he has his own things going on and it's very
Yep.
clear that he's kind of reserved in how he handles things, but CL is there to ground everything. And I appreciate where she comes in and kind of takes away some of that like overly stressed feeling. And it's very interesting how she handles a lot of the different situations that come up. And her gameplay, she is like once I learned her whole foretell twilight moon phase system, it is a little bit challenging to learn it. But once you learn it, oh man, she can become anything and everything all at the same time. And she could be support, she could be deal massive amounts of damage. I mean, she could do it all. And if you really put the effort into building up her skill set and like putting together the right skills, you have a completely unstoppable force on your squad. And there's some effort there in all the characters to learn them. I do think she is a little bit more of a challenging character to learn. Just the way that you have to kind of like stack the foretell and then make sure you're in the right phases and then use the right skill at the right time. But if you do it right, I mean, you could clean sweep fly through the game even at some of the lower levels. And yeah, she's great. Absolutely
Yeah.
adore CL. But I also want to mention um Verso because at first I didn't like his play style. I didn't have him in, and I had to like look up some, YouTube videos and kind of, ask you a few questions and kind of learn how to build
Because I'm
him
getting
out.
broken.
Yeah, I had to like learn how to build him out, but once I did, he was another one that like, oh man, you could totally go off with him in your team. And the thing I like about this game is there's the actual mechanics of building out your characters are so deep. There's so
Yes.
many different ways to build out the
Yes.
characters. And
Yep.
if you want a certain play style, like you really want to dig into one character because you really like how they play, every one of these characters can be completely OP.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You just have to put the
Yep.
effort in to learn it. And once you do, it's really, really, really satisfying. When you see the, damage hit or like whenever you wipe through like a boss fight, um, the true work can go into just, putting together the right squad and building them out correctly.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna shout out a couple of other characters that you missed. Gustav as well, fantastic character. I love Gustav's, not how do I want to say it? He's like this big brother father figure that's just great. And in the beginning, he's kind of processing through everything um, because there's a lot going on when you play this game. I won't say more than that, but there is a lot to process. But he really comes around, and I love him as a character. And then Minoko as well. Minoko is a character you'll get later
Yeah.
on who is hilarious, and he is a permanent mainstay on my team because he can get absolutely broken as well, and he's very versatile. Just speaking of like being able to build characters, Monoko could be literally anything. Um, he could be support, he could be damage, he could just be a massive tank. Like this guy's awesome. But I do think my favorite character. Oh man, it's hard to choose for me. It's probably between Mael and Verso, probably just from a combat standpoint. I mean, also I love all of them from a story standpoint. I just don't want to get into the reasons I love them in the story. So I'm not gonna go there. But but Verso Mael can get broken very early on from a combat standpoint. There's this village that you can go to, and I am going to shout this out because a lot of people miss this apparently. There's a village you can go to. In the village, you have to do this arena, and who you beat it with will determine what weapon you get. Beat it with Mael because she gets this weapon that puts her into a stance that gives her like 200% damage. It puts her there immediately. Normally, you have to build up to it, and I am at level 90 fighting the hardest bosses in the game, and I am still using that weapon. So that is like the weapon. I'm sure there's another build for her, but don't miss that. I'm gonna shout that out there. And because of that, she can get broken very early in the game
Yeah,
and
that's
do
what I was
some
about to
insane
say.
amounts of damage.
That weapon
Yeah,
helps so like because all this is not really major spoilers. All of what you described is very early in the game, and that weapon is
yeah.
very helpful in the early game. Like you have that weapon early on, you're pretty golden.
Yep, yep. And then Verso, just from a combat standpoint, again, I'm not going to talk about any of the story elements, but um, he can have several different builds. One of the builds that you can set up with him is basically like it's a base attack build where you can use your firing shots and then you can attack, and it gives you a lot of AP, and it also scales up and does damage very quickly because his play style is the more you attack, the more your damage increases until you hit a certain rank by getting these like perfection points. And so I built that guy out so that he is just an absolute monster, and that he can get skills later on where you get him up to his highest rank, he's doing insane amounts of damage, and then you can add a skill on top of it that does just again absurd amounts of damage. It feels so good to play with some of these characters and build them out. And the way it works, for those of you who have not played this, the way the combat system works is from an equipment standpoint. It's not like your traditional RPG where you have like weapons and armor. You have weapons that can have certain skills attached to them, and then you get these things called pictos, which are they like give you abilities, but they also give you stat increases, which I found out way later in the game than I
Yeah,
should have. Um,
I was so shocked
so
that you're
I know.
like, "Oh, I didn't know." I was like, "Oh my
Yeah,
god, I I built my entire party around that aspect."
yeah. And then so when you get those pictos, within 4 battles, you'll learn that skill for everybody, and then you can equip it. So it's almost like a Final Fantasy 9-ish,
But
system.
you don't get the bonuses from the what do they call them?
Correct.
What do they call the equipping them outside of the Pictos? There's like another
The, like,
word for yeah.
luminous or
Yeah, you
something like
have
that.
those points where you can equip them or whatever. You don't get those like big stat bonuses
Right,
unless they're equipped in your Pictos.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I didn't realize that because what I was doing, Slam, is I was just equipping the highest cost,
Maxing them out
skills.
and then
Yeah,
swapping
so that
them
I can
in.
try to get as many of the other ones in as possible
Yeah.
by using those points, and so sometimes that really worked out for me, which is why I was doing so great, and then at some point, I swapped something out for one of the characters, and I was like, "Oh,
And you
I
saw
see it
yeah, that's how
now."
I learned it early on. I swapped one out and I noticed like some of my stats were off and I was like, "My it's not right." And then that's how I learned it. But yeah, they don't
Yeah,
tell you everything. That's another thing I love about Expedition 33. It does force you to learn things on your own quite a lot,
yeah,
and experiment to get the best outcomes. And I can't tell you as someone who's played games for most of their life, I understand why the heavy tutorialization is in there. I don't even know if that's a word, but I understand
it is now.
why it's in there for a lot of people that want to know how to play these games. But um, I do get frustrated when I'm starting a game and the first 3 hours is a pop up every 10 seconds. Every time I click on a part of a menu, every time I walk into a fight, every time I like go into a new section, it's like, read this pop up, read this pop up. And I'm like, I don't need to be told everything. Sometimes you just want to learn it. You want to
Yeah,
figure it out on your own. Expedition 33 basically requires you to learn the entire game that way.
yeah,
It can be challenging in that case, and you can learn some things that are absolutely crucial to the game way late, like Brandon here did. But it doesn't take away from your enjoyment of the game. It
not at
really
all,
doesn't.
not at
In
all.
fact,
And
whenever you do recognize it and you do learn something, it clicks in your mind. You're like, oh my God, I have all of these options open to me now, and now I can like
yeah,
change the way I experiment with things. I
yeah.
like it.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because I'm again, I've beat the game. I'm just going and fighting bosses now, and uh, I got, and this isn't. I don't think this is. If someone gets upset about this, then I'm very sorry. But I got frozen because that can happen to you for like the first time in the entire game after I beat it, and a thing popped up that was like, "Oh, this is what happens when you're frozen."
Oh yeah.
So I was like, "Oh, that's a thing too, I guess. That's interesting." Um, but yeah, one other quick shout as far as things that I learned that they don't really tell you is this game, it just auto saves. And a lot of people were like kind of freaking out about that because as RPG fans, we're all trained to manually save our games. For those of us who have gone back to the, Super Nintendo PS1 era of RPGs, we're like save it as often as possible, right? Um, so that made it difficult for some people who wanted to go back, but I did find that the section that I talked about with Mael, where you need to beat that arena to get that special weapon, I actually did it incorrectly the first time, and I freaked out because I knew I wanted to get that weapon, and then I discovered that you can go to your autosaves, and they actually keep a good list of autosaves for you, and you can reload.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to call that out because you may totally miss that. I don't think they ever told you about that in the game, but I was able to reload and get the right weapon. And then later on, for some of the harder boss fights, you get to a point where, and maybe we'll talk about parries and stuff like that a little bit as well. But you get to a point where there are some boss fights where if you like mess up the first parry when they're doing a big attack and you don't do it right, that's pretty much it. And so I
Yeah.
was getting frustrated because I was like, man, now I have to do the rest of the battle and basically just slowly die because I didn't like set up right. Um, and then I discovered that you can also go to that menu in the battle as well. You do it
I
by
didn't know
clicking
that
the
the whole game.
Yeah,
Brandon
yeah.
told me
So
about it, and I was like, "Man, that would have been so useful." You know how many
yeah,
times I like voluntarily killed my whole party so I could start over.
exactly. Yeah, so you can also reload and then just go into the battle again. So
A lot
those
of
2 I
tips
think
and
were
tricks here for you so you don't
yeah,
have to go through the struggles that we went through,
yeah,
not realizing this stuff. So, hopefully it's useful.
yeah. Yeah, but the battle system, we should talk a little bit about that as well. The battle system is I don't know, perfect is a strong word, but it's probably the best turn-based battle system I think I've ever experienced in a game. They not only do you get into the character builds and the types of battle styles that you get with the characters that Slam mentioned, but in the battle itself, you have your attacks where you can do timed button presses. So it's very reminiscent of like Legend of Dragoon or um, not Paper Mario, although Paper Mario as well. I was
Yeah,
going to
Paper
say Super
Mario
Mario
does that.
RPG um, and other games that have used that kind of thing. But in addition to that, when enemies attack you, you can either dodge or you can parry, and dodging is a little bit easier. You're given a little bit more of
Window.
a window for it. And then parrying is much harder. But if you can parry, you'll do a counter attack. And later on, you you're pretty much going to live or die by parrying. And so I did the type of play where instead of dodging first to like learn timing and then starting to get into parry, I would just do battles over and over and over and over again until I could perfect it, and then I would destroy everything. Um, and that made it so that every single battle that you went into was interesting. I never got bored with a battle. And I did a
Yeah.
ton of grinding. Of all of our group of friends and creators that chat, I was the insane person that by I think act 2 I was like level 50 or something like that.
I
And
beat
for
the game at
context,
50.
yes, I
Yeah.
was going to say
I beat
for
the game at
context,
50.
most guides will recommend that to beat the game, you can be around level 45. I beat the game at level 87. Um, so I did a ton of grinding and I never got bored. In fact, this is so much the case that when I beat the game, I went back in because I'm like, I want to go do more battles, right? Like Slam said at the beginning, I don't think it's been a very long time since I've been so invested in a game like this. And I love my games. I'm very enthusiastic about the games I play. But I just can't put this thing down, even after beating it. It's just so much fun. Uh, I would love to see Square Enix or any of the other RPG studios like study this game, like take a look at what they did. Each of the characters can do these like free aim shots, and you can like aim at the enemy's weak points, and then on top of that you have the parry system, and then you have the time button presses.
So,
It just, everything about it's so good.
yeah, so here's what I think makes the combat system so incredible. Um, it uses like mechanically and the moment to moment gameplay, it uses a lot of mechanics we've seen before, right? It reminds me a lot of Persona because you've got your ranged attack where you can aim and shoot.
Hmm.
You've got a variety of different skills that you can put in, and the various personas in a Persona game will allow you to optimize that. Where I think this game truly shines, though, it's not necessarily in the parrying and dodging and the actual moment to moment stuff. For me, it's how they kind of created uh, this loop that is very similar to job and class building
Mm,
and baked it into the combat.
mm,
So, you've got each character has their own very specific skill set and skill tree and the way that their combat kind of builds, right? And your
yep,
goal is to build your character to be optimized based on the weapon they're using and the skill set that they have, right? And there
yep.
is so many different ways to do that. And the thing that like it's almost like my hook, right, is usually in like a JRPG, it's like I want to level up. You know what I mean? I want to grind so I can level up. But in this one, it was I want to grind so I can, unlock this other skill, bake it in, try that out, see how it works with this skill. And then, like CL, like I was saying, her whole like foretell and all that system and stacking that and then all the other moves and how they feed off of it. It was the experimenting aspect and how
Yep.
advanced the systems outside of combat are in like to the combat. You know what I mean?
Yep.
The combat itself is very fun. Don't get me wrong. The bosses and the enemies larger than life, amazing enemy designs. The environments are incredible. Like
Yep.
going into a fight, it's very, very well executed. Just the moment to moment gameplay feels right. But the hook is like optimization for me
Yep.
and just
Yep.
perfecting that and seeing all the work that you put in and how creative you yourself can get with building out these characters, seeing
Yep.
that kind of like go off in the best way possible is so satisfying.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it's all of these things combined. Like for me, the reason I did so much grinding is because you also get these attributes, which are your standard like strength, defense, speed, or agility. I think it is luck, right? You have those like five stats, and then every level you'll get 3 points you can put in somewhere. But the weapons that you use will scale certain stats better than others. So one sword for Mael, for example, might scale strength and agility, but another sword might scale defense and luck, for example, right?
Yep.
And as you play through the game, you'll get these like recoats, these items where you can basically you can reorganize your stats. There's a term for this. Used to use it in MMOs all the time. Respec. You can respec your stats, um, and eventually that becomes kind of part of the fun. You see a new weapon, you see the potential of that weapon, and you're like, oh man, I could use this weapon, respec to have my stats built this way so that I can scale damage more quickly. And then I can use Pictos in a certain way to optimize the thing that the weapon is doing and build your character that way. And it's exactly that, right? Not only is the battles themselves interesting and engaging and fun, but what you get from the battles, it's the whole loop. They just took this turn-based battle system and made it really something special and something really really fun.
I think it's
And
so often in games too where the different stat adjustments and skill tree like skills or whatever don't make this gigantic impact, right?
yeah,
Where you'll put all this work into like optimizing a character or whatever, and you just really don't see that big of a difference in the actual combat system. This game doesn't have that issue at all, right?
yep,
It's immediately obvious and clear, right? Like I was
yeah,
saying before, where I learned like the whole Pictos thing by, a build just being slightly off. It only took one combat encounter for me to learn that because
yep,
each thing you do to your character build is so impactful, right?
yep,
You immediately see the results and I think that's so important. And I think that it it's so key to the enjoyment of the game. You know what I mean?
yep,
It's not all this stuff that they built into the combat. I mean, I would love to be a fly on the wall in that room for them when they were planning this out, building this out, testing it, adding these things in because the attention to detail and building this out is just it's flawless to me. You
yeah,
said you don't want to call it perfect, but I have a hard time not
yeah,
calling it perfect.
yeah.
I mean,
That's
it's
what I'm saying. Like,
one of the best combat systems I've ever played in a video game. And it's
yep,
really not that close. I think that they really have something here. And, whether it be DLC or a sequel or whatever, how they build on this, I'm really, really excited to see because I think we've talked about this on previous podcasts where, um, you, like we mentioned it in Persona. What do I want out of Persona 6? I want to be surprised, right? I want something I didn't expect. I could have never expected Expedition 33 to be what it is, right?
yep,
We could sit here even prior to the previews or even after the previews, after we played a little bit of it, and been like, this is what I kind of expect from this game. but it's so much more than that. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And you almost you can't even think up in your mind something this crazy.
Yeah.
And that's when you know a game is really special. And I'm just so excited to see what the creative minds there have in store in the future.
Yeah, it's a wonder they actually released this game because if I was one of the game testers, I'd just keep playing.
I just keep playing.
Yeah, it is a really incredible piece of work here. And I think that just captures it. I think the reason we're gushing about this single game on a podcast where we're normally talking about, dozens of different games that we've played, the reason we're so locked in on this one is just every single element, every single attention to detail is just so refined in this game. And again, this is, I don't want to like keep coming back to this constantly, but this came out of an indie studio and it's a 49.99 game. Like I'm still just, we'll get $80 AAA games that will not have this level of detail, this attention to detail that we got in this game in every single element. Exploration. There's one part in the beginning, so I'm not spoiling too much here, and I'm not even going to spoil this one too much, but there's one part in the beginning where you start, you're with Gustav, you're walking through this area, and one of my first comments playing this game was, "This beginning area is very linear." And when I think of linear, I think of like the critiques you hear about games like Final Fantasy 13, where people are like, "Oh, it's not open enough, it's too linear." But the attention to detail to the aesthetic as you're just walking down this hallway and you're looking around, you are sucked into the scene with Gustav being like, what the heck happened here? What's going on? And as things start to get darker and you start making these realizations, it becomes this like overwhelming scene in the very beginning when you're just walking down a hallway. Like that's an example of everything in this game. The reason I'm going back after beating it and chasing down all of these things that I didn't find is because nothing is fluff. Everything has a purpose, everything has a story, everything contributes in some way. And then that goes all the way down to the battle system and the details of the battle system and everything else. It's just, the game is not only incredibly creative and beautiful and mesmerizing, but it also, as Slam said earlier, encourages you, the player, to be creative. And I won't go into too much detail here either, but the way the story unfolds also speaks to the player in a way that it speaks to the characters. Like it just, I just don't understand how they pulled this off so brilliantly. But this is like, we talk about 10 out of 10 JRPGs all the time in our sphere, right? You got a bunch of videos that are like 10 out of 10 JRPGs, these kinds of things. And I'm like, this is one of those rare games that is like an 11 out of 10, or I jokingly called it a 15 out of 10, right? Like this is something that goes so well beyond what I would expect from a good game that it's just this is it's going to be one of those that sits with me for a very 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 long time.
Yeah, you spoke a little bit on the linear aspect of the game. I'd be interested to get your thoughts on if it could have benefited from being a little bit more open and had some, exploration aspects to it. Me personally, it was jarring at first, where I felt that there could have been a little bit more potential for the game had it been a little bit more open, because it is very linear and it carries that way through most of the game. A lot of the area is very linear. As I went on, I didn't mind it as much,
Mm,
mostly because for as you know creatively free you are as the player, and how you play the game, this is a very story focused uh, adventure. It is, the story here grabs you, and I had a hard time not just getting to the next story part of the game. I really did, because it really hooks you in. It
Yeah.
is like one of those bingeable TV shows where it's like next episode. All of a sudden, you're watching 5 straight hours of a TV show. You know what I mean? That's like kind of what Expedition 33 is like. And is when I was getting toward the end, I was like, man, I was talking to Brandon because it's funny. The whole week we were playing it, story wise, we were pretty much in line right around the same spots
Yep.
throughout the entirety of the playthrough. And I got towards the end and I was like, I'm finishing it tonight. Like I'm just gonna sit down here and I gotta see what happens. Um and for that reason, I don't mind the linearity of it. Because it helped me kind of not get wrapped up in all the extra side stuff. And I do always say it's like, oh, we gotta save the world. There's all this dire stuff going on, but let me go do 500 fetch quests for
Right.
some random NPC before I get to that, really urgent thing that needs to be done. Um, Whereas in Expedition 33, if you do decide to like adventure off and beat some extra bosses or whatever, it contributes to the overall uh picture of the story. You know what I mean? There's always it like you said,
Yeah.
there's no filler. It's like everything kind of impacts the overall goal of the game. So for me personally, I don't mind the linearity in this case. I typically prefer a more open structure where I can approach things as I please and venture off and just do random stuff. But here I felt like it fit.
Yeah, I think there are two pitfalls that you could fall into with the game design, right? If it's too linear, it can be boring. I think that's one of the reasons that people criticize linear games so much, is because it can be really boring. You're just going in one direction. It's like a hallway, and the hallway is not very interesting. So it just makes it so that it feels like a waste of time. And then on the other hand, I think there's a pitfall, and here's my hot take of the day. I love Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, but I think Final Fantasy VII Rebirth falls into this other pitfall, which is there's too much openness, there's too much stuff to do. There's so many, you could spend 15 hours doing content before you get to the next story beat. And I feel like this game, to me, this is my opinion, I feel like this game brought those two together and hit the middle perfectly, in my opinion. I think some of the linearity that you have in some of the locations you go to, they're not boring. Like I said, what you can find, what you can see, what you can observe, like you're constantly in this like state of jaw dropped wonder as you're looking around, being like, "What the heck happened here?" Right? And you're finding these little things, and the way they, because one of the other critiques for this game that I've heard, not as a major critique, but just something that people bring up, is the lack of a mini map in these areas. But the way they designed each section, typically there's like the main path, and then there's usually
There's
one
a
or two
fork in the
offshoots at a
road.
time.
Yep,
Yeah.
and you gotta kinda
Um,
decide, I'm gonna
yeah,
explore every
but
one.
but yeah, you find those forks, and usually you can find weapons, you can find items, you can find journals from other expeditions. Like you can find all the stuff that makes it worth going off the beaten path. Sometimes you can find like optional bosses, and when you overcome them, you'll get a special weapon or an upgrade to a weapon or something. Um, and so I didn't have a problem with the lack of a mini map at all. In fact, to me, it just increased the immersion because I really had to kind of like get a sense of where I was, get a feel for the location, and that made it again not boring. It was always fun, or it was always intriguing, or it was always interesting. And then at the same time, there is a world map in this game, which was kind of unexpected and worked out really, really well. It's not just a world map, but it's a world map with layers.
Yep.
So there's when you get an SKA is in some of the marketing materials. So I'll just say this: when you get SKA, he's the big fluffy dude that you can run around on the map. He gets different skills later on that lets you
Traverse
tackle
it,
the
yeah.
map in different ways. Um, and you basically will have extra content that you could go explore, fed to you bit by bit by bit as you go and as you unlock some of these things. So it never felt like too much, um, but it never felt boring to go and explore and find those things. So I just feel like they, to me, what they found, what they got to was probably better from for them as a development team, like not having to go the Final
Yep.
Fantasy VII Rebirth route and just go crazy and add a bunch of content, but also making it super interesting and making it so that no matter how linear a particular section is, you're always interested in what's coming next. So yeah, so I mean I don't want to I want to be careful not to overstate, but I really do feel like they just found this perfect balance that made it constantly fun and interesting. And I think that's why it felt so bingeable. To your point earlier, Slam, right?
Yep.
That's why I just never wanted to put it down. Always wanted to find the next thing.
Yeah. Definitely. This overall, I think they also, each new area you get into, even though it's linear, vastly different. And that
Yes.
helped kind of shake things up. Looked different, felt different. The music was different, which I mean, the music's incredible. We already said that, but every single area has like this vastly different feel to it. That kind of helps you, get immersed in entirely different ways for each one. Some of the fights, you know, those soundtrack, like those, the music for some of those is just like, wow, it's
Yeah.
extremely noticeable how good it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really like that aspect too. I think the world, the lore built around it, and how they kind of explained everything in bits and pieces. And like you said, the other expeditions journals, that adds a lot more context to a lot of the different areas you explore, which is really, really good if you're into that sort of thing, which I very much am. Um, I just think, yeah, they really, really knocked it out of the park on almost every aspect of this game. I haven't been
Yeah.
this hooked in a really long time, really.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so interesting the music as well. Bringing that up, a lot of JRPGs. Um, some people are going to be like, "This is a Western RPG." Look, it's both. Okay, this is a Western JRPG. That's just it is what it is. But a lot of JRPGs we play and we love that. Like maybe if you're lucky, you'll have like one half of the game that's got some battle music, and then the second half of the game they change the battle music, right? And then you'll have some cool boss themes, but it's usually the same thing over and over again. And this game, as you're exploring, I feel like for every area, they had like four or five different tracks that would play depending on the enemy, depending on where you are. So it constantly felt interesting. And some of the boss battle themes, man, oh my gosh. There's one I described it. We were listening to the soundtrack, and I was actually with my mom. I'm constantly pulling my mom into this stuff. Shout outs to mom out there.
Shout
Um,
outs to mom out
but
there. That's hilarious.
but I was laughing. I was like, this is like French French metal is how I described one of the boss songs. Um, and it was just so good. And my 4-year-old in the back, we like we listened through it, and she's back there and she was like, "Daddy, I want to do that again." And I was like, "Word, let's go, girl. Let's let's do that one again." Um, yeah, it's an incredible soundtrack. And apparently they found this guy Lorian, I'm not gonna say
Yeah,
his last name right.
on
So I'm
SoundCloud.
just
Hey, there's
yeah,
the
oh
the
there's my
the
there it
thumbs up
is.
is back, man.
Yeah,
We
it's
missed
back.
that last week. You know what
Oh,
I
there it
mean?
is.
God, we
Yeah,
needed
but they
that.
found this guy dropping stuff on SoundCloud and they brought him in, and what he produced, I'm just like, who is this guy? Like, this
Yeah.
is an incredible soundtrack. Yeah. So that's another like 10 out of 10. I'm constantly listening to soundtrack. It's constantly going through my head. This game is again art. It is an experience. I feel like even you're probably not going to watch this if you're not a JRPG fan, but even if you were not a JRPG fan or a turn-based combat fan, you would like this game. I
Yeah.
am confident in saying that. Anybody could come play this game, and I guarantee you, you will walk away massively impacted, if not changed. It's that good, and the story is that good. The music, the combat, everything. Like I cannot give it any higher praise. And frankly, the high praise that I'm giving it doesn't even really do the game justice.
No.
Like you just need to play the game.
Absolutely. It This is, like you said, it exceeds a 10 out of 10 for me. The characters, the story, and we will get into a spoiler cast later on because I do think, I mean, obviously, we're going to
We have
give
to.
this one some time to breathe. I realize that we, you know, powered through and played 50 to 100 hours in a week, and not everybody has the time for
Yep.
that. So, not time for a spoiler cast yet, but there will be one coming because I really do want to dig in to all the story beats, everything this game has to offer from a writing perspective, how these characters interact with each other. I mean, I went into CL briefly on how she approaches, and certain situations in her personality,
So
but
good.
each one of these characters has deep, deep writing and creativity put into how they were built and structured from a writing standpoint, and it's just
Yep.
so incredibly good. And I mean, we could dig into the story for hours, but um I feel that from oh man, from a from a studio that put together something like this that is this small, I just can't wait to see what they have to offer. Not just in Expedition 33 in this world, but any new IPs that they put
Yeah.
together in the future. And there's supposed to be a movie for this, and personally,
Oof.
a
We'll
lot of
have to
the
talk about that on the spoiler cast.
yeah, a lot of the time I'm not big on movie adaptations or TV show adaptations of games, but I do feel like a big part of this game is how you grow with these characters throughout this long journey that you have, how you connect with them. It would be hard to replicate that in a couple
Yeah.
hours.
Yeah, and shout outs to the voice cast as well. The voice cast is unbelievable in this. Like everybody knows Ben Starr. He's this cool guy
Yeah,
that was Clive in Final Fantasy 16, and he's been playing a bunch of other characters. He's kind of becoming a big deal in the voice acting space. But it's not just Ben Starr. Like
yeah.
this
Gustav
entire
was
cast.
the
It's Charlie
Daredevil.
Cox, right?
Yeah, the Daredevil
Yeah,
actor. Yeah, and he
yeah,
was
which was
great,
amazing.
amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
all of these voice actors they brought in an incredible cast, and what they deliver is so good. That's just another element of this that's 10 out of 10. But yeah, I'm excited to do a spoiler cast for this one because there is a lot to talk about when it comes to the story. And we don't want to spoil things for you guys here if you're watching this and you haven't played it yet. But absolutely go play this. Could not recommend it enough. Again, this is something I struggle to say because I don't want to overstate, but this may be my favorite game of all time at this point, and that's saying something because there are some really, really massive games that I love that are still my favorite up there. We'll save that for another podcast episode, but this one it's definitely up there. If it's not number one, it's certainly number two.
yeah.
It's just hard. It's
It's
hard to beat
close.
this game.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
I'll be talking about this one for decades, honestly.
yeah, yeah, yep. All right, man. Well, anything else we want to chat about this game that we missed?
Oh, so much more, but all those are spoilers. So, I think
Yeah,
this is it for what we can offer you from a spoiler-free perspective, and I think we did a good job of not really spoiling anything, beyond the first couple hours of the game or that hasn't been touched on in the previews prior to release or the marketing material that you see in trailers or images out there.
yep,
But yeah, you can. I we could get into just so much more with this game. I could sit here and gush about it forever, but um, yeah, that's it for this one, I think.
yeah, yep. All right. Well, for upcoming episodes, don't worry, we will have Taylor come back. He did fall into a black hole, and I think he's fine. But he'll be back. He'll be back, and we'll have some other guests coming on as well to chat that we're excited to bring on. So if you liked what you hear here, that was kind of fun to say.
Here, here.
Make sure you subscribe, like, share with your friends, share on Twitter or anywhere else you share. We'd like to continue building this podcast out and get to 1,000 subscribers. So Your help would be very, very appreciated. Slam, where can everybody find you?
Slam Zany on all the things, you know. I recently did a top 10 list of feel good JRPGs. There's a spoiler. Expedition 33 is not on there. It's a pretty heavy game. So there are some really there are some really cool games that if you come away from Expedition 33 and need something a little bit more lighthearted, check out that list. You'll find one on there. But yeah, Slam Zany on all the things. I'm also on Twitter as well. So
Yep. And you can find me at Nova Brand on Twitter. It's retro branded, but the actual tag is Nova Brand. And then, of course, retro branded on YouTube. I did just get this Slam. So I'm thinking, if I'm looking for a lighthearted, I don't know. Actually, I've heard that it could be really, really intense. I'm not sure, but I'm thinking something, I don't know, smaller,
yeah.
more compact after this one. If I ever put it down, we'll see. We'll come back next week and I'll tell you if I stop playing Expedition 33.
I hear
All right,
you.
everybody. Well, thanks for joining us. Let us know in the comments down below if you have played this game, if you're planning on playing this game, or if we convinced you to play this game, which we should have. And you should absolutely go play this game.
Yeah.
And otherwise, we'll see you all in the next one.
See you on the next one.
Thanks for joining.